If you're focused on the ground floor, you're not looking at where we need to go. And that's how we make an organization, a company successful, is moving that forward so that we can do what we want to do. You saved the day because there was a problem with your process and it caused the issue. Fix the process. You don't have to be Superman every day. That's because you're not documenting the processes. You're not training the team. You're not looking at metrics to measure the results. You're looking at the tactical aspect of things. Once someone else starts doing it, they'll probably do it better than you would. Time's our most valuable asset, right? You can make more money, but you can't make more time. When today's gone, it's gone forever. So how you utilize your time will determine the success of your life and your business.
Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual. Now today I'm excited to welcome Joe Siecinski to our podcast. Joe is a mentor and guide for CEOs and executive teams, and he's particularly focused on mastering business growth and leadership. Now, he's got extensive experience spanning from Fortune 50 giants to innovative startups, making him a go-to expert for leaders that are seeking to navigate the complexities of expanding their businesses. What I think really sets Joe apart is his ability to bring clarity and strategic directions in so many areas of business, whether it's economic, regulatory, team management, transforming companies into profitable and respected entities, like all these different areas. But today we're going to delve into a critical aspect of leadership with Joe, which is the art of letting go. This will involve the diving deep into the psychology behind relinquishing control and why it's essential for scaling your business and fostering team growth that you're able to let go. And Joe's insights are particularly valuable for those leaders grappling with the balance of managing and empowering their teams and not micromanaging and so on for optimal success. So Joe, I'm thrilled to have you come and share your wisdom on this pivotal topic. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much. It's an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive in with a bit of your experience. Can you perhaps briefly describe your experience that you've had, because you've had an incredible career, and where you've got to in terms of mentoring CEOs and working with their teams for business growth?
Well, everything from the military to spending 25 years with a Fortune 50 company in senior management to running my own business for the last almost 15 years now. And it's focused specifically that transformation that, when you go from kind of thinking like a technician to manager to actually an owner to a CEO to the C-level to the leadership aspect of things, you go through massive changes in your thought process. And that's what we get to do here at BrainShare is, where is your brain share and how is it focused? And that's a key to that transformation of letting go and moving to the next modality of running the business. Because if you're acting like a technician, you're going to be a technician. You can't take that next level up and look at everything and moving up that ladder to say, hey, am I in the right, seeing the forest from the trees? Well, are you even in the right forest? So that's kind of that methodology and taking that next step to letting go of the things that you can delegate out to other people or should be delegating out. I'm going to say that again, should be delegating out versus doing yourself, because that's the key. We've only got so much time. Time's our most valuable asset, right? You can make more money, but you can't make more time. When today's gone, it's gone forever. So how you utilize your time will determine the success of your life and your business. And that's what we get to do here. And that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Fantastic. And you've worked with so many different business leaders and so on. What have you come across in terms of the challenges, the obstacles that they face when you or they identify that they need to be letting go in their businesses? What are typically they starting to hit?
Well, it's that comfort zone too. I've been doing it this way for so long. Trying to do this is hard, and it's changing habits. Like James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits. What do you do? And making sure you've got the right team in place to delegate to, and the right processes, tools, and metrics in place. Because if you don't feel comfortable about that delegation process, you're going to keep doing what you're doing, versus delegating it out to the right person, letting go of that task, that responsibility. That doesn't mean you still don't have ownership of that responsibility, but you delegate out the aspect of actually doing it. So you've got ownership, but you delegate out accountability and responsibility for actually doing the tasks, or the responsibility. Or when you delegate out, let's say you're marketing, and you hire a company or a VP of marketing or a CMO, you've got to ensure that they're doing it, and you've got to let go of that and then monitor the metrics, not the actual tasks.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the bit that stood out for me there that kind of got me thinking about this in a way that I haven't before is that comfort level. You mentioned around that for a lot of leaders, they're comfortable doing the doing and uncomfortable then delegating, and you have to become comfortable with delegating. And that's something that I hadn't really reflected on until now, is that part of my journey through doing this, and I've shared in other episodes how I used to be a terrible delegator. This is not an area of skill that came to me naturally. It's something I've had to build that muscle and particularly learn the techniques that have made it easier for me, given kind of my personality style and so on. But actually, that's one of the biggest changes, is I've become comfortable with delegating, to the point that in some cases more comfortable with delegating than with doing.
Even doing it now. But that's that big change, is where, I don't want to do that. That's not something I should be doing. I need to be focused up here, not down here. And in my experience, there's a process to delegate. And when you implement a process, then it becomes easier and easier to do because it's repeatable. So many people abdicate versus delegate. And that's where the problem happens. It's like, oh, you take care of it. Guess what? It's never going to get done the way you want it to. And then you're going to pick it back up and you're going to do it yourself, because it's easier to do it myself than it is teach somebody else to do it. I hear that one all the time. That's because you're not documenting the processes. You're not training the team. You're not looking at metrics to measure the results. You're looking at the tactical aspect of things. Once someone else starts doing it, they'll probably do it better than you would. If you train them right, they're gonna put more brain share into doing that than you can allocate, because you've got so much. You start moving up that ladder of, okay, you know what? I need to be focused on the higher level aspects of the business, the strategic aspects. You don't have time to do the tactics, and that has to be delegated out. Otherwise, you'll be working 80 hours a week and not going anywhere. The harder you run, the less you get done.
I like that. Yeah, and I've fallen into that trap so many times in the past, and certainly it's something that I've seen with my clients as well. Is that loop, as you described, the way that you abdicate, you go, oh my God, well, firstly you start off by holding on to it too long, and then finally going, okay, I know I need to delegate it, and so they abdicate it, and then it goes wrong. And it's almost like, see, I told you so. I told you this, I couldn't hand this over to someone else. I told you that this, accountants couldn't do this finance stuff for me. And then they take it back on. And it's almost like now the resistance to trying again is even harder. And you end up on this spiral where it just kind of breaks up for putting prophecy.
And then you keep piling more stuff on yourself. And then you get to that point of, wow, why am I doing this? This isn't worth it. And you start that downward spiral versus, hey, I've got this person doing this. And instead of being the orchestrator, you become the tuba player. Guess what? You can't play all the instruments yourself. So how do you go through that process of, okay, what makes sense to start delegating? And I use a technique called a skills fund matrix. Does it require my skills, and is it fun for me? If it's not fun for you and requires your skill, it's a conscious decision on what you delegate out. It shouldn't be, oh, I'm spending so much time there. You go through a process of, okay, what do I need to delegate out? Where do I need to be putting my brain share to get the company to where we want it to go? And then once you identify that, then you say, okay, do we have a documented process and tools for that? And then as you're delegating out, you make sure you put the metrics in place so that you can monitor the progress of that task, that function, and still keep the pulse of what's going on without doing it. And that's when business gets really fun, is when you go, hey, I got it running, versus, hey, I'm running.
And so when we look at the getting out of that loop, if that negative spiral of kind of abdication and failure and then taking control and so on is obviously the wrong way to go. The alternative approach, often one of the challenges, you kind of mentioned before around, documenting processes. We need to give that guidance, not abdicate it, properly delegate, make sure that we're measuring the KPIs. What about, what are some of the ways in which you've seen this play out? Can you perhaps share an example of a particular leader that perhaps you've worked with that was struggling with this, and what are the steps that they specifically took to kind of overcome this?
Well, I remember one that was starting to delegate out the financial aspects of things. Mm-hmm. And instead of delegating, it was abdicating. You guys take care of this. And 3 months later, I told you they couldn't do it right. And it's like, well, let's talk about what you did in that transition, because it is a transition. And it was, well, I handed it to him and I said, I'll see you next month. That's not going to work. You didn't set expectations. You didn't document or talk about what you're doing today and how that's working, and what metrics do you use to measure that process. And once we got him thinking differently, and it's all about thinking differently. Letting go of that. And nobody can do it as good as me. It's that ego thing. I see this with managers and new supervisors a lot more of, if I tell everybody what I'm doing, then they'll have the power and I won't be the go-to Superman guy. I call it the Superman syndrome, the hero syndrome. I fix the problem. And they rip off the coat and you got the big Superman there. Oh, I saved the day. Well, you saved the day because there was a problem with your process and it caused the issue. Fix the process. You don't have to be Superman every day. But that ego aspect of things is it releases endorphins. You're like, yay! And letting go of that, because you don't get that same rush as a leader, because you're getting things done through the team, not yourself. And we've got to find ways of getting that same feeling of accomplishment through other people. And that's the key, is like, hey, we got it done instead of I did it. And that's a big mind shift to, hey, if it gets done, I still, it's my team, my organization. We did it. Not that I did it, but I put everything in place to make it happen. I'm going to tell you a true story about one of my mentors over the years. And he goes, I said, Don, you're not in the office very often. He goes, nope. He goes, if I'm doing my job, I can be out on the golf course 4 days a week. And it used to drive me crazy, because I'm working, I'm the marketing manager. I'm working, 10, 12 hours a day, and I'm like, and he's doing nothing. And I sat down with him one day. I said, Don, I just don't get this. And he goes, my job is to put the right people in place that's going to do a better job than me, and to make sure it's being done. So if I do my job right by putting the right people in place, making sure the right tools and processes in place, and I'm playing golf every day, that means I'm really doing my job. And it took me so long to wow, he's right. If the business is working without you, that means you're doing the best job possible. And, back then I didn't get it. Now I'm like, oh, he was brilliant. He put one of the best teams together I've ever seen, and focusing on the balance of the skills for the organization, not just him. So what balances him out and what balances you out in the organization? And you can get into disc personality profiling and disc profiles and everything else. And that's another understanding that helps with this. If you don't understand the team dynamics, if you got too many high Ds, you're going to sit there and fight all the time. And if you don't have enough high Ds, nothing gets done. Everybody just, so what's the different personality profile makeup of your team, and bringing the right team on for balance to accelerate the progress of the organization.
Yeah.
Kind of fun, huh?
It is fun. And I think particularly when you start to think of yourself as a business leader, as someone who's responsible for bringing together the right players on the team, and giving them clarity over what their role is and how you're going to measure that and so on. I think it does fundamentally shift your kind of identity as a business leader in a really helpful way. And as you say, it kind of helps with the psychology of the kind of endorphin hit of, I'm Superman because I have solved a problem. And instead, actually thinking in this much more rewarding way of actually, my job is to pull together this incredible band of people who each have their own role and bring something to the party. And my job is basically make sure that team stays running as effectively as it can. And if someone has to leave out that team or, gets hit by the proverbial bus or whatever, it's like, okay, right, now I step in off the golf course, get the next leader in and so on.
Or if I've done a really good job of contingency planning, there's somebody else that's ready to take that role in and move around. This is when you get sophisticated enough, you're going, okay, let's look at the organization. What happens if I'm not here? What happens? What happens if this person, and you go through a contingency a planning exercise that says, oh, you know what? I need to train more people here or cross-train here. And the more the team is cross-trained on the different functions. I remember a lot of the Fortune 50 companies I used to work with, they used to put managers in different functions, and they're like, well, they know nothing about that. They're not going to. Well, the purpose of that is so that they will understand it. So they got a broader view of everything. And that's another key as you start going up that executive channel. The broader vision you have, the more you can kind of move up from the top of the tree to seeing all the forests instead of the one forest you're in, or the tree that you're in, or all I see is the ground level, right?
Yeah. That's nice. I also really like that lens of looking at, for anyone in my organization, what's my contingency plans? Exactly as you say, a good leader has got contingency plans for every single member of their team. And it reminds me that, so at the time of recording, I've got a member of my team on my other software business, and Spider Gap, who handed in his notice to go and do some really cool stuff. I'm really, really excited for him. He's off to go do some like acting and directing and writing and so on, which has always been like his long-term career goal, but for various reasons didn't pursue it earlier on, and now is able to do it. So it's like good reason to be leaving the business. Super happy for him. But my favorite thing was how the team were able to manage the entire process of offboarding him and planning how we're going to cope operationally. That our processes for recruitment mean that we've already got, and I've covered this in a previous episode of De-Stress Your Business, we've got a farm team. We've got people who we really liked from previous recruitment processes, but we didn't have a vacancy. And so we've kind of kept them warm and kept in contact over in some cases multiple years, so that the decision that we've got to make is in which country do we hire. We've got farm team members in these different countries, and so literally all I had to do as part of that team member's exit was review the draft email comms to go out to the company and go, oh, can we add this or make this change? And then
Little
contact the
tweaks instead of
individual staff member, right?
creation.
Indeed. And so, but it's interesting, like playing the game, because in all honesty, like I think we went, for whatever reason, maybe it's COVID or whatever, but we went a long period without losing a single member of staff, which kind of is easy to lull you into a false sense of security and not think about it. But it's a really interesting exercise to look at for every member in your team. What's your plan? Like, could you, if they left tomorrow, how soon could you have someone in post and delivering at the minimum level of standards and requirements to be able to do that role?
Well, now roll that back one more and say, okay, now this is what drives the development plan aspect of things. So you're looking at this and saying, okay, well, hey, if you want to be in this role at some time, what training, what skills do you need to develop to be there? And so your contingency planning rolls into your development planning for not only the organization, but yourself. If you're not doing your own development plans or working on a development plan on how to get to that next level, your team's not either. Walk the talk. You know, we're parents, right? And it's not what you say, it's what you do that the kids are going to follow. The same thing with an organization. It's not what you say, it's what you're doing. If you're doing your own development plans and you're doing your meeting, then the organization is. It's so, you know, focus more on yourself. You know, Jim Rome, work harder on yourself than you do on your business. It works. It's the way it should be. But we get so tied up in our own, you know, the mind is such a complex thing that it makes things more complex. Keep it simple. Hey, I've got my own development plan. This is what I need to be working on so that I can delegate more effectively, so that I can let go of some of those things that I shouldn't be doing. I had a CEO that was actually diving into the financials like way too much, like spending more than 10 hours a week on the financials. Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, what are you doing? And because I look at his calendar, I said, "Where are you spending your time? Something doesn't feel right here. I don't know what." And we start diving into this calendar, and I'm like, "Look at all this time you're allocating to that. You know, how many CEOs do you know that are spending that much time doing this? Well, I got to make sure that I know where every nickel's going. No, you got to make sure somebody else is watching where every nickel's going, and you need to be focused on the strategic direction of the organization, managing the other functions, and ensuring profitability so that the company can continue to thrive, not just survive."
Love that. And what occurs to me as well is initially when you said 10 hours of diving into the financials, here's what I visualized. I visualized a business owner who has a finance administrator doing the numbers, but that they're spending 10 hours like diving into looking at the income statement, the profit and loss, the balance sheet, the cash flow, like diving into that. Whereas then when you described it, it's like, no, they're doing all of the finance stuff, right? They're doing the bookkeeping and so on.
Why are you paying bills? I mean, he was actually paying some bills. And I'm like, and first of all, why isn't that systemized? Because all you should be doing is at the most approving it. And you shouldn't even be. You have the budget set up, let the finance team do that. You're paying these guys, and you're doing their job. It all goes back to the brain. They're not doing it right. There's no trust. So a couple of and by the way, I like to reference books and then incorporate that in. You know, you talk about letting go. Hey, Marshall Goldsmith talks about this. Letting go of the vine. To take that next level up, you got to let go, and that's hard. It's not easy. But when you develop a process to do that, from my perspective, because I'm a process guy, if there's a process that makes it easier, don't have to think as much. The more you thinking takes a lot of energy, and we should be thinking about the right things, not the minutia, not the noise. It's that higher level, and to get that higher level, you got to let go of those tasks that don't require your skill set or your role. And it's uncomfortable.
Agreed. And when we think about then how you let go, one of the things that we've talked about is the importance of, because we don't want to abdicate, we want to make sure that we're still delegating, which means that, to my mind, it's about giving sufficient guidance, but also then measuring and monitoring the outputs more than, so you provide the guidance so they can do a good job, but then rather than saying, oh, well, hang on, have you done it exactly how I said? That only matters if it then causes a problem with the outcome, right? If they make a mistake or they miss something or whatever. So if we think about that outcome, and previously you've alluded to, like, you need to be looking at the metrics, is really important. What are some how should a leader be looking at those metrics? You mentioned about keeping it simple. What would be the right approach? Because for a lot of leaders, metrics is something that they struggle to apply, particularly when you get down to kind of individual role level and delegation.
Well, and so you got to break things down. I mean, first of all, let's just take a marketing, for example. What's the role of marketing? It's lead generation. Okay. And the highest level metric is number of leads. Okay. Are there different ways to slice that? Absolutely. What are those metrics, and what do we need to put in place? This is where you should be thinking, because metrics drive behavior. Put the wrong metrics in place, guess what? You're going to have the wrong behavior. And we've seen that all over, especially in sales, where you get the shark mentality and other things. So putting that, and every business is different. Every business is unique, yet every business is the same. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But when you take a step back and say, okay, what should I be measuring to drive the behavior that I want? That's when you put the correct metrics. And guess what? From year to year, they'll probably change based on the constraints in the business. So as that leader, you should be identifying the biggest constraint in the business. Goldratt talks about this in Theory of Constraints and the Goal. And says, okay, one of your main jobs is, what's the biggest constraint? Are we allocating the appropriate resources there? And are we optimizing the processes? Now that takes a different brain power, and it's harder than, let me go pay a bill.
Yeah.
That's, come on, that takes a completely different thought process. You got to really move up that, looking at the big picture. Hey, what's the biggest constraint in my business? Okay, if that's the biggest constraint, instead of diving into it and doing it yourself, how do I make sure it gets done? So that one of my favorite sayings is, especially when you're starting out, pay attention to what you do with the intention of training others to do it. And it's a different, so if you're thinking about, okay, how do I make it easier for myself? No, how do I get it so somebody else can do it, so I can move up that thought process? And that's a different way of thinking. I told one of my CEOs, I said, you got to get lazy. And he's like, what do you mean I got to get lazy? I said, think about how you don't have to do anything but sit back, look at the financials, look at your customer survey results, look at your employee survey results, and make sure your things are going in the right direction. That's your job. You're driving the ship. You're not rowing the boat. The more you row the boat, the less you can drive the ship. Or whatever analogy you want to use. But if you're rowing, you can't be driving the ship. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I think what I often see is this challenge as the business grows. And by that, I mean, in the early days, you have to do the doing. You're the only one that is in the business. You haven't got any money to pay anyone else, and you don't even know whether the business will fly and whether any of it works. And then, of course, as you start to grow it, you start to get to a point where either you need some kind of personal assistant to help you with some basic admin, or maybe you start to get to a point where you need a salesperson or someone on the operations side or whatever. And I think the hard thing is that for some people, some leaders are just generally sort of have a preference towards doing the doing, and they're fine in that space. Like for them, they're the ones that are hustling and making sales, and perhaps they can, as a result, drive a few 100,000 in revenue and do well to do that. But then you've got other leaders who actually their preference is not to do sales and not to do the doing, and they'd prefer to get other people doing it, but it's too early in the business to do so because they haven't worked out what works yet. So if you hire a salesperson, they're not going to succeed because you've not worked out how to sell your product and so on. I think that's the difficulty is a lot of people are one or the other side of that. And so you kind of have to overcome some of those challenges and those ways of thinking to do it. Are there any examples of specific leaders that you've worked with where you're like, here's the moment it changed for them, like here's the switch that went in their brain? Because I think I'd be interested whether it's a gradual thing or whether it kind of just switches on for people.
I think it's a switch, but then the implementation is gradual, and it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. A lot of times, it's like, oh yeah, oh no, that's right, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? And doing that root cause analysis, well, it didn't work because we didn't put the process together. You let them go, and they didn't understand all the implications of doing something. So you weren't kind of delegating, walking through things so that you can hand it off. You got into the abdication modality. And some leaders, I've got one right now that he is the best salesman for the company. No ifs, ands, or buts. Guess what? He should be selling. It's okay. Understanding those roles and responsibilities on where you're focused and where the team is, it's okay to say, this is what I should be doing. I'm going to put the team in place to handle the other aspects of things. And this is kind of that, basic, I'm going to call it job description. And it's okay to say, you know what? Part of my role is sales, and I'm going to focus on this, and I'm going to allocate 50% of my time to focusing on those strategic relationships that's going to drive the company to where it needs to go. I've got other leaders that say, you know what, that's not my skill set. I'm going to bring somebody on to do that, and I'm going to focus on the operational aspect of things, and I'm going to allocate more time to that. And that conscious decision of, this is where I'm going to allocate my time, and I'm going to delegate it. If it's a conscious decision, it's probably good. If it's the unconscious decision, that's the ones that actually cause problems. I'm like, did you actually decide to do that, or did it just kind of happen? And most of the time, it's, it just kind of happened. Well, let's take a step back, analyze things a little bit, say, what do you like to do? What don't you like to do? What are you good at? What you're not good at? Where are the gaps in the organizational structure? What are the constraints for the business? Now we can move quickly forward. If you don't, you might be band-aid, putting a band-aid on a scratch when you got a tourniquet on you need for your leg. You're bleeding, hey? What are you worried about the band-aid for? Put the tourniquet on, stop the bleeding, and then we'll go fix the thing. So that biggest constraint aspect of things takes brain power and takes a step back. And once you've identified this, I got to go down this one. I had a CEO that goes, as soon as I fix this, everything's going to be great. And I started laughing hysterically. And they're like, well, what's wrong? I said, man, you fix this constraint, guess what? There's another constraint. And then there's always a biggest constraint if you're trying to grow the business. It's like a big fire hose that's got a bunch of kinks in it. What's the biggest one? Working on the little ones don't matter. Biggest constraint, and then there's going to be another biggest one, another biggest one. And that's what's fun about business.
Yeah. Is
identifying that constraint, putting the right resources to fix it, and then finding the next one and the next one, and growing the business and putting the right people in place or the right training in place to ensure that they do it not as good as you, but better than you.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think that point around when you tackle a constraint, there'll be another one. Like, it reminds me of a phrase which is your prize for solving your biggest problem is a better quality problem. And that just happens over and over. And as you say, that's the fun thing about business, is doing that. So you have to lean into that. And it reminds me of conversation I had with another business owner where we're talking about the difference between tightening the bolt, like fixing the immediate problem, versus keeping the bolts tight. And it's a different mindset, and it's a different approach, and it's a different set of things that you need to put in to do it. But fundamentally changes the game for a leader from one of firefighting, of constantly having to run around tightening bolts, versus taking that step back and going, okay, how can I make it so that this is always as it should be? And it does change the game. And I think people don't realize how much it does. Like, how it's almost like they don't see how good it can be. And that's weird. Like, for you, like, you've worked with so many different businesses. How good can it be? Like, you've mentioned the example of a previous manager of yours who was spending 4 days on the golf course. But like, some of the clients that you've worked with, like, where do they get to when, what's the promised land in terms of?
Well, I got one yesterday.
Yeah.
I haven't worked for this company for probably 2 or 3 years, and he calls me up and he says, "Joe, I got a problem." I'm like, "Well, what's your problem?" He goes, "I got too much money."
Great.
I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, remember," and he goes, "Because we were working together, we did a lot of stuff, and then you really hit me in the face." I said, "What do you mean I hit you in the face?" He goes, it was over $50 million, not a huge business. He goes, "But you're only making X dollar amount, not enough." And I said, "Something's wrong." And he all of a sudden that light bulb went off when he goes, "Why am I not running at a 10 to 15% net margin?" And the light bulb went off, and he goes, and now he comes and say, "Hey, Joe, I need a financial advisor and a tax advisor because I'm getting taxed." I'm like, "Fantastic! What a great problem to have."
Yeah.
And we went down that path. So to me, when you hit that, "Oh, I don't know what to do with this money. What do I need my tax planning. I need this. I need that." That's kind of getting to where you want to be. And it all goes back to me, that defining your ultimate goal. Where do you want to be? What does that look like? That, whether you use a dream, a vision board, a dream builder, goal setting, they all work to saying, okay, this is where I want to get to. And if you don't define that, guess what? You're going to go around like this. Knowing where you want to go, putting the plan in place, and then executing the plan keeps it simple. It's when you run around in circles, you get tired, and you don't go anywhere. Set a goal, put the plan in place, and it's not going to go smooth. Accept and embrace that. You're going to get stuff with COVID hit. Boy, changed the game for for most people. It changed the game completely. I've watched a lot of businesses that just completely went out because they were, if you got an event business, I had a company, they did events. Guess what? COVID hit. No more events. Can you pivot? Can you do Zoom? Some of them, you know what? We're going to shut down and start over on something new. That's okay too. It's a conscious decision on this is the way we're going to move forward. To me, again, that unconscious decision is what causes a lot of the issues.
Yeah, indeed. And for those businesses that are perhaps hearing this and thinking, okay, I get it. I know I need to let go. I know that, if I do this in my business, it's not going to be a smooth journey, but I'm willing to try it and to learn and to get better at this and to give proper guidance and to review the metrics and do all those things. What happens when they start hitting the roadblocks of their team? Because even earlier today, I joined a call that one of our consultants was running with a client, and how they'd had some really great impact in parts of the business, and they were looking at a particular team they were going to take it over to, and their concern was, there's some individuals in this team that have been in the business a long time before, because this was an acquisition that they'd done. And so they're worried, they've been in the business a long time. They're very anti change. And then, we want to free up time. We want to reduce the risk of those team members leaving by documenting their knowledge. And, I want to take the business owner, because as I said, it's an acquisition. I want to take the business owner who's in there as well. And I want to free up their time so that they can be more strategic in that business and help grow it rather than running in the business. And they had this blocker, this concern around how do I, and I think a potentially valid one, how do I get those people to buy into the benefit of this? Because I think a lot of business leaders think, well, I see the benefit for me of delegating, and I see the benefit for me of having the things documented and a contingency plan if anyone leaves. But actually for the rank and file or even the managers and so on, isn't it in their interest to be absolutely required and indispensable in the business? So if you were talking to that client, what would you be saying to them or asking them to kind of help break through those obstacles?
So that's that whole dialogue with, hey, as you move up, other people move up, right? And their thought process and the management of the team grows. We're going to need more people here. To move up there, you're going to either have to grow with the company or stay stagnant, and somebody else is going to grow with the company. So I use this analogy a lot. It's easy to be a big fish in a small pond, but when that pond gets bigger, you either got to get bigger too, or you're going to get eaten by some other big fish, right? I mean, it's just the way it is. So as the pond gets bigger, your team and this is, to me, goes back to basic development plans. Hey, you want to, and some people I remember one great manager. I said, hey, we're growing. We're going to be looking at, a director level here. And he goes, I don't want that responsibility. And I'm like, okay, that's okay, because we do need people here too. And it's like, okay, who are you going to groom to take that? Or who would you recommend to be, kind of, we put the training program together for that. And we had that dialogue, and he said, this person, okay, and what happens? That doesn't work out, and that's your contingency planning again. But having that open, honest dialogue is critical. You don't want to put a square peg in a round hole, or whatever analogy you did. If they don't want to do it, that might be okay. Now, I'm going to give you another one. I got into sales, and I hated sales. I was running the service department, and they wanted me to go into sales. I said, no, I hate salespeople. I hate it. And my boss's boss came to me and said, Joe, we want you to go do this. I said, no, I hate salespeople. No way. He goes, try it, because you're not going to be selling. You're going to be fixing problems. And I went, oh, okay, I'll try it. Hey, to me, that was one of a life changer, because it wasn't about selling. It was about solving a problem and helping a customer to achieve their goals. And just that understanding of that mind shift of what is that role helped me evolve through that. But without that dialogue, that wouldn't have transpired.
Yeah.
Communication's key.
Yeah.
So this is a fun one. Here's one of my favorite. How often are you doing your one-on-ones with your team? And if you're not doing them at least once a month, if not weekly is my recommendation.
We do weekly.
Guess what? Now, this is a fun one to ask. How often do you do your one-on-ones with your team? What's your agenda for that? How do you look at your metrics? And have you asked them what they think the metrics should be? And he's like, well, why would I ask them what they think the metrics should be? Because they're doing the job. Ask them if they were going to hire somebody else, how they would measure them.
Nice.
And it's interesting. I like the upside down org chart. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Okay, so a typical org chart, you got the leader up here, and you got, and I'm going to use the term I use is this person up here. A lot of companies kind of craps on everybody else.
Yeah.
Well, right? I mean, you've seen it. Turn that org chart upside down, and you got the team that's facing the customer, and the management team is there to support them. Steve Jobs said this: I hire good people so they can tell me what to do, not for me to tell them what to do.
Love that.
They're closest to it.
Yeah, and it's interesting when as soon as you visualize the org chart upside down, it actually looks more like a tree, which is quite a useful sort of analogy for it, right? Is like, yeah, the very tendrils, the ends of this system of your org chart are essentially your leaves. It's kind of, it's the external facing. They've got to be the ones that are actually, photosynthesizing and doing good things. But actually, you've got to keep that, be that trunk, and make sure that everything's stable and works well and so on, even during strong winds. So I can, and it reminds me of, a related concept which may come from the same source, which is around thinking of yourself working for your team rather than the other way around. Like thinking, I need to do a good job for them, and showing up in that way is a powerful switch in mindset. If we go, like you mentioned,
let me take that one level deeper, because if you use the tree analogy, the tree is what everybody sees. But as you know, there's just as much under the ground as there is above. And that's what the leadership is about, is all those roots so that the tree can grow. Without those strong roots, the tree is not going to grow, or it's going to fall over. So what are the roots that we have in the organizational structure, the contingency planning, those other aspects, so the tree can grow, bloom, produce fruit, and continue to grow? That's the fun part of business.
Yeah, it's working out what needs to be in place to be able to support that, right? And continuing this analogy to the point at which it's going to break and fall over, it reminds me of, I remember seeing a diagram where it was basically showing how most people draw a tree with the root system and the diagrams, and how the root system is kind of a mirror of the branches above, right? Like we've all seen that diagram go into the earth. And the truth is that that's not the case. Right, the root system doesn't go as deep down into the ground as the tree does go up into the air, and there aren't, in terms of mass of root system, there isn't as much as what there is up there. Trees are incredibly efficient. They create a root system that goes actually pretty shallow but out wide to create that fundamental base. And I think that's the interesting thing of business, is essentially working out as a leader, what's the minimum that I need to create in terms of that depth, but breadth to cover, contingency for every role, and making sure I've got weekly one-to-ones and that I'm supporting personal development of the team and so on. And actually, it's interesting, a bit like when we work with clients, like documenting their process and so on. I think that initially they think it's really, really big, like there's a lot to do. But the reality is, actually, it's a little bit everywhere. Like that's what makes the difference. It's, you don't need every single process in your finance function documented and every person in it like absolutely A player. Like you just need a basic level, and suddenly finance is not your biggest problem and you can focus somewhere else. And so,
well, you focus somewhere else, and that's the whole thing, is guess what? If the business is truly growing and you're still making a difference, you're going to have to focus in different areas as you address the constraints. And as you grow, that same function may be a constraint again, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Embrace that. Hey, great, I got to go back to marketing. We got to redo everything, because I used to run the marketing and sales, and I had the operations manager. And it was so much fun, because they'd be like, oh man, we need more business. Oh wow, you got too much business. Yeah, I'm doing my job. And they're like, oh yeah, well and that's how you grow, is that competitive aspect of it, we're together, but it's like, hey, I'm going to overload you. No, I keep it. And that was such a great relation. I just got goosebumps thinking about that one, because that kind of relationship is for the good of the company, but it's like that's healthy. what was it? The 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Is that Patrick Lencioni?
Yes, and if you've got, you talked about, as the company grows, people grow with it, and they either grow or they need to get off the bus or know what seat they're in. It's okay, but make it a conscious decision, not a Peter Principle decision where you promote the people to the highest level of incompetence.
Yeah.
I've seen that. You've seen, we've all seen this. Like, you got the wrong person in the wrong job. They know it. You know it. Nobody just, we're all, I had one a month ago. In fact, hey, what are we doing? And they called me and I sit down with the, it's like, are you happy here? They do the, oh yeah. I'm like, look at your face. You're not happy here. They're not happy here. Why are we playing this stupid game? And everybody's like, you actually said it. I'm like, you're not happy. I'm not. Let's find a place where you're happy. You're going to do a better job. The organization is going to do better because it's like a boat anchor, trying to, go across. Don't play the stupid game. Find a place where you can accelerate your growth and knowledge and have fun and be contributing versus you're not happy. The organization's not happy. Why are we playing this? But how many times do you see that game play out over and over and over? This is like, have that base conversation. Hey, it's not working. It's okay.
Yeah.
Let's find a place where you can contribute the way you want to, or let's help you find a job with a different company. It's okay. Not a big deal. Oh my gosh, I'm getting fired. No, you're not getting fired. You're finding a better opportunity. The world changes and you got to change too. It's okay.
I think you're right. Having that dialogue with your team makes all the difference when you're then trying to communicate why you'd want to delegate and help them to delegate more and do all those things, is so that people can enjoy their work more, which I think is really powerful. In fact, it reminds me of some of my favorite opportunities that we've had to work with clients have been where they're doing it for the team. It's, they're conscious that their team is stressed, or that they're conscious that their team aren't able to take holidays, and that's why they want to do it. And I think that's so powerful in terms of a message to the team. But I want to respect your time. We're running out of it. So before we go, Joe, give me your, what's for anyone that's listened to this and thinking, yeah, I need to be letting go and so on. What's the key takeaway that you'd like them to go away with?
Back up and look at the big picture and then put the plan in place and do that on a regular basis. Time's our most valuable asset. If you're focused at on the ground floor, you're not looking at where we need to go. And that's how we make an organization, a company successful, is moving that forward so that we can do what we want to do personally, spend time with the kids, get out on the golf course. That is probably the goal, not having a whole bunch of money, but you'll have a whole bunch. You need the money to do that. So identify the goal, put the plan in place. Don't overcomplicate it.
Love it. Great advice. Joe, it's been awesome talking to you. I'll include a link to your LinkedIn page and your website in the show notes. But how would you recommend that people learn more from you, reach out to you, etc.?
Go to brainshare.us, which is brainshare.us, baby, or brainshare.pro, which is kind of the higher level. So we've got an e-learning system. We've got one-on-one. My goal is to help 10,000 businesses this coming year. And I can only do that with a combination of e-learning and other things. But my goal is to help businesses. That's why we're here. That's why we exist. If you're not sure what to do, just give us a ring and we'll brain share some.
Fantastic. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Joe. It's been great talking to you and having you on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it.
My honor and privilege. Thank you. And thank all of your listeners and viewers. Have a great, great day. Anything we do to help out, let's help change the world.